Hi, I'm Beth, and I'll be reading you today's e-edition of the Bourne Enterprise, dated Friday, October 24th. Here's your first front page headline: Bourne bans kratom after emotional hearing. Miracle cure or garbage drug? The Board of Health's meeting on Wednesday became a staging ground for a larger debate that has swept through city and town governments across the country, whether to ban kratom, a Southeast Asian plant whose dark green glossy leaves are consumed by users for the mildly stimulating opiate-like sensation that it produces. Used recreationally and by those experiencing chronic pain, kratom, along with its concentrated synthetic counterpart 7-OH, has long been sold in Bourne at gas stations and smoke shops. The Board of Health voted unanimously to ban both after hearing dozens of accounts of kratom-related deaths from grieving mothers and of miraculous success stories of those who have found value in their use of this unregulated herbal product, joining Belchertown, Lowell, Chelmsford, and Dracut, all of which banned kratom. These bans are taking form in towns across the U.S. in response to the recent nationwide rise in popularity and dependence on the far stronger and more dangerous synthetic, a concentrated kratom-related product 7-OH. 7-OH is a naturally occurring chemical found in trace amounts, less than 0.1%, within natural leaf kratom in its unadulterated form. Isolated, concentrated 7-OH is a distinct drug from whole leaf kratom, a fact noted by both kratom advocates and by the FDA, which in July announced a crackdown on the drug, recommending its classification as a Schedule I substance. Currently, the DEA is reviewing the FDA's recommendation, and a nationwide ban can only take effect after new regulations and definitions are drafted by the agency. 7-OH binds to opioid receptors in the brain, providing a morphine-like sensation of euphoria, pain relief, and sedation. And from 2016 to 24, the U.S. Poison Control Center has reported a 700% increase in 7-OH-related calls as its popularity grows. 7-OH is an opioid that can be more potent than morphine, FDA Commissioner Marty Makary said of the substance when asked for comment. And indeed, the Texas Department of Health Services describes 7-OH as having 13 times the potency of morphine on its departmental website. Its use increased dramatically in 2023 when many types of 7-OH products, including tinctures, gummies, and drinks, flooded the market. Compared with normal natural kratom powders, teas, and capsules derived from the plant, 7-OH is 5 to 50 times more potent. The Board of Health heard the account of dozens of activists who spoke at the hearing from both sides of the issue, including Laura Romney of Utah, a kratom educator who uses the drug to treat chronic pain, as well as Susan Eppard, whose son Matthew died from toxicity, the mitragynine alkaloid toxicity, the specific chemical found in kratom. I'm a patient that has a serious facial nerve disease called trigeminal neuralgia, which is often called the suicide disease. And I've been a kratom consumer for 8 years after suffering for 13 years, Romney said. I've tried everything to control my pain, including neurosurgery, 30-plus pharmaceuticals, and even a nerve stimulator implanted in my face. I was resigned to having to take opioids. Kratom, however, resolved these issues. It allowed me to be able to come off of opioids, and I've never looked back. She stressed whole leaf kratom's distinction from synthetic 7-OH, recommending that Bourne regulate leaf kratom to improve safety and outright ban the stronger, concentrated, unnatural substance. Most importantly, we want regulation, Romney concluded. On the other side of the issue, Eppard recommended banning all versions and forms of kratom, both synthetic and natural, citing its dangers and telling her harrowing story of personal loss caused by its use. My 22-year-old son Matthew died from whole leaf kratom powder, the least potent form of kratom available. Kratom caused him to have a seizure, go into cardiac arrest, and die. His toxicology showed he died from the toxic mitragynine alkaloid found only in kratom, Eppard said. He had no prescription drugs, no street drugs, nor alcohol in his system when he died. His autopsy showed he had no underlying health conditions. Testimonies from over 53,000 users on Reddit's Quitting Kratom forum show its withdrawals are horrible, with many comparing them to heroin and other opioids, she continued, and described the devastating loss of her son to board members. My life has been reduced to warning others about this garbage drug, she continued, her voice shaking. I'm unable to mourn my son's death gracefully because each time another person dies of this drug, my heart is ripped open all over again. After dozens of personal anecdotes of kratom's life-changing pain management powers and of grievous personal loss caused by its use and misuse, the Board of Health voted unanimously to ban the sale of kratom in town. The ban is a ban on the current sale of kratom, unregulated to the public, Board of Health member Dr. Miguel Prieto explained. Not all iterations of kratom are the same. They're not the same products, and there's no way to control the variability of that. It may be medicinal for some patients, but it can be extremely harmful to others. The ban specifically prohibits the over-counter sale of kratom as it currently is offered by head shops and rest stops. This does not mean that it doesn't have medicinal properties, Prieto said. This doesn't mean that we cannot make medications out of that substance. Gee, we make some medications from poison. That's what coumarin is. It's rat poison. Second front page headline, all 13 articles pass at special town meeting. On Monday, Bourne's special town meeting saw all of the 13 articles put up for vote approved, but Article 12, a motion to amend Bourne's zoning code and bring it into compliance with the MBTA Communities Act, was the subject of extensive criticism from voters despite its unanimous approval by the Select Board and Finance Committee. Although the motion passed 69 to 47, half of the approximately 225 registered voters in the audience abstained. All of the planned projects for funding year 2026 will go forward, however, including design and engineering work for the Monument Beach Marina, replacement for both the police station and Bourne Middle School roofs, and the integrated solid waste management facility overhaul, among others. Article 2, which adjusted the FY26 budget, was approved with 193 in favor and 11 opposed. This adjustment shifted $100,000 from various accounts and included the cost of living salary increases for firefighters, according to a recently settled union contract with the International Association of Firefighters. Further, it increased the salary of the facility director position and added an administrative assistant position with the DPW. The article also promoted a part-time role at the library to a full-time position and provided additional funds to cover police and fire department overtime salaries. Article 4 allows the town to appropriate $1.5 million toward a list of capital outlay projects, new breathing apparatuses and a forestry vehicle to the fire department, continued soil testing at the Veterans Memorial Community Center, a new animal control vehicle, and repairs to the Bourne Public Schools wastewater treatment plant. Article 5 was a return question for voters whether or not to fund the $2.5 million project to replace the failing police station roof. Previously, at annual town meeting in May, this project failed to pass muster with voters who expressed concerns about the town confronting the cost of repair. The roof failed within the 6-year repose period, meaning the contractor and architect can be held liable for structural failures. Since then, the town has filed suit against both Casely Booz, the architectural firm, and M. O'Connor Incorporated, the contractor, for negligence and code deficiency. The town filed this lawsuit after an extensive study was conducted on the structural integrity of the relatively new roof by Gale Associates Incorporated, which found extensive issues. Since receiving this report, the Select Board has filed a lawsuit against the general contractor and the architect of record, Select Board Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti said. We intend to pursue recoveries for work that was not installed correctly to help pay for a replacement roof. It is clear there was a significant lack of oversight by multiple parties. With voters' concerns surrounding taxpayer expenses assuaged this time, the article managed to receive the two-thirds supermajority required for its passage, with 203 in favor and 26 oppose. Article 6 called for the town to replace the 25-year-old Bourne Middle School roof. Recommended unanimously by the Select Board and Finance Committee, it was approved by voters 214 to 13. Articles 7 and 8 both pertain to the long-anticipated ISWM facility overhaul. Both were approved. Article 7, 207 in favor, 14 opposed. Article 8, 209 in favor with 11 opposed. Article 9 provided $710,000 for design, engineering, and permitting services to upgrade the Monument Beach Marina. It passed with 183 in favor and 9 opposed. Article 10 appropriated $25,000 of Community Preservation Commission funds to remove approximately 29 trees from the Sagamore Cemetery, among Bourne's oldest and most vaunted burial grounds. It contains the remains of 2 Revolutionary War captains, along with around 29 sea captains. Longtime Cemetery Association Director Elizabeth Ellis spoke on behalf of the CPC funding request, which was approved 183 to 7. Article 11 approved the town's plan to secure the easements needed to complete the intersection improvement project on Barlow's Landing. Article 12 was by far the most contentious of the decisions put before the town meeting. This article adopted local zoning provisions to comply with the MBTA Communities Act zoning law, which mandates that all MBTA communities, those communities served by or adjacent to those served by the MBTA, create an approximately 37-acre area in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. Bourne thus created the Multifamily Overlay District in the town zoning code, bringing the allowable density of housing up to 25 units per acre. This measure is intended to allow for the creation of new missing middle housing, serving young adults, seniors, and middle-class Cape Codders, many of whom cannot afford the average price of a house in Bourne, which is now $684,000. It does not mandate that any new housing be built. However, it merely makes it legal to build denser multifamily housing units on lots where the zoning code previously forbade it. These modifications are currently required under state law. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell has upheld challenges to the act put forward by Milton, Duxbury, and other towns in court. Should town meeting have voted against the zoning modifications, it could have meant the loss of local control over the zoning process, along with the loss of state grant funding for dozens of projects across town. And the zoning code would have been changed in the end to match the parameters set by the MBTA Communities Act. This fact was emphasized by Finance Committee Chairman Arthur Wayne Sampson. Both the Select Board and Finance Committee voted unanimously in favor of the article, recognizing the potential consequences of noncompliance. Voters, both those in favor of zoning reform and those against, addressed the meeting. Supporters noted the pressing need for workforce housing on Cape, the unaffordability of market-rate housing in town, and the general need for greater housing. Detractors inveighed against the potential of new multifamily housing to disrupt neighborhood character, and against the location of the MFOD, contesting the need for affordable housing options. Sue Barlow of Buzzards Bay argued that increased housing density would increase traffic and expressed concern about neighborhood character. "I'm really concerned about this proposal," she said. "Trying to put the whole burden of supplying workforce housing for Bourne and all of Cape Cod on Buzzards Bay seems pretty unfair. It's just going to completely and radically change Bourne, your downtown, and make it pretty miserable for everybody that lives there. I don't understand why we keep trying to get more and more people on Cape Cod. I think we should be trying to preserve Cape Cod the way it is." Many in the crowd applauded. "I know too much about triple-decker, double-decker housing and what it can do to a city. It just destroyed Brockton. Brockton was a leading city. Then all these double-decker homes were built and they pretty much destroyed it." Voter Tom Barnes of Grey Gables concurred, echoing concerns about town character. I have no problem with this kind of community. It would be great in Attleboro or Bridgewater or Taunton, but not in Cape Cod. This is probably the worst article that I've ever heard in all of the town meetings I've been to because it's absolutely going to destroy Buzzards Bay as we know it, he said. If you vote for this, you're voting to change the culture and the community and completely change the Cape. He went on to question how nitrogen runoff will be affected by increased housing density over time and the general environmental impact of new development. If that's what you want, vote for it. It's going to completely change the character of Cape Cod. Another voter, Scott Fitzmaurice of Pocasset, spoke twice in favor of zoning reform. I love when the town of Bourne is forward-thinking in our initiatives and we come together as a community, he said. We need to think about our legacy as a town. Obviously, this zoning could also affect the possibility for future MBTA service. He urged voters to consider that about half of the people who work on Cape currently commute, and that many do not have access to a car, making public transit access a crucial issue that has a bearing on traffic and the local economy. Ultimately, the debate was ended by motion, with 161 in favor of ending zoning discussion and 21 against, leading to the ultimate decision on Article 12, 69 in favor and 47 against. Roughly half of the approximately 225 voters in attendance chose to take a position on the issue, and the margin of success of the article was a mere 22 votes. In Article 13, the last of those put before town meeting was a petition by the owner and operator of Katomet Fish, Patrick Ross, along with his wife Jenny Ross, to authorize the Select Board to advise the General Court to issue an all-alcohol package store license to their small business. The article passed with near-unanimous approval, 101 to 1. Now, Katomet Fish will be issued a special legislation package store license. Multiple long-time customers, other local business owners, and voters spoke in favor of the motion. Town meeting ended after the lengthy debate held over Article 12, with residents filing out of Bourne High School's auditorium doors discussing the changes that will eventually take place. In other front-page news, efforts at reaching an accord of a new contract between the town of Bourne and the union representing the town's police officers have proven unsuccessful. Due to the impasse, both sides have filed a petition to the Mass Joint Labor Management Committee to settle the contract. The union has been negotiating with Bourne Town Administrator Marlene McCullum since late winter to reach an agreement on a new contract. Despite good faith efforts, the union and town managers have been unable to reach a new collective bargaining agreement. Among the issues David Genesi, Director of External Relations for the New England Police Benevolent Association, cited in his release is the salary discrepancy paid to Bourne officers versus their colleagues in other towns across the Cape. He said the shortfall between Bourne and other towns ranges from 4.7 to 12%. Genesi compared pay schedules in Bourne versus the average among police departments in Dennis, Falmouth, Yarmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich. He offered the following comparisons. An entry-level officer in Bourne makes an annual salary of $64,000 versus a peer average of $67,000. An officer with approximately 4 years in Bourne makes $69,000 a year, while the peer average is $75,700, a difference of $6,500. An officer in Bourne with approximately 10 years of experience makes $78,949 as opposed to a peer average of $88,000, a difference of $9,000. He said that it takes Bourne officer 20 years on the job to reach the top of the pay scale, while it takes an average of about 10 years in other towns. Even at the top step, Bourne remains significantly behind comparable communities, he said. These gaps translate into lost candidates and experienced officers leaving for neighboring agencies. During a phone interview, Bourne Police Chief Brandon Esip declined to speak at length about the negotiations. However, he did refute the union's claim that the Bourne department has a staff retention problem. I do not believe that is the case in our department, the chief said. He acknowledged that in his time as chief of police, the only loss of personnel has been due to someone retiring from the force or someone being let go for disciplinary reasons. McCollum stated that among the increases she said she has agreed to in a proposed 3-year contract are any officer who was a Step 4 in FY25 and moves to Step 5 in 1 year, Step 6 in 1 year 2, and Step 7 in year 3 of the contract would receive base pay increases of approximately $16,600 over the 3-year period, increasing the detail rate to $80 an hour by the 3rd year of the contract, along with shift differential increases for officers who work the evening and night shifts, increasing the annual education incentive payments to $14,500 for every year for every officer with an eligible bachelor's degree, and $16,250 for each officer with an eligible master's degree. I completely and wholly respect the Bourne Police Department, and I've bargained in good faith in this process, McCollum said, and I will continue to do so until the end so that we're able to increase the officers' pay in a fiscally sustainable way that is affordable to the taxpayers of the town of Bourne. Genesi said that both sides are awaiting scheduling by the Mass Joint Labor Management Committee. And state and local officials are sounding off on the announcement last week that federal funding for the Cape Cod Canal Bridges Replacement Project could be in jeopardy. The potential loss of billions in federal funds would further delay the start of construction on the century-old Sagamore Bridge. Russell Vought, director of the Federal Office of Management and Budget, OMB, posted on X on October 17th that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would be immediately pausing over $11 billion in lower priority projects and considering them for cancellation. Vought said that the pause in funding is due to the ongoing shutdown of the federal government. The OMB said that President Trump wants to reorient how the federal government prioritizes Army Corps projects. In a social media post, Vought said the shutdown has drained the Army Corps of Engineers' ability to manage billions of dollars in projects. While his post did not name any of the projects that would potentially lose federal funding, a Reuters report published in the Straits Times of Singapore quoted the OMB and cited the Cape Bridges, a waterfront park in San Francisco, and a water and wastewater systems in New York City. The Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works issued a statement and said, "We believe that our office and the Corps may be unable to provide adequate oversight of all the projects." The statement added that the administration may consider taking further actions allowable under the law that limit, cancel, or reprioritize resources. State Senator Dylan Fernandez, a Democrat from Plymouth and Barnstable, said Trump and congressional Republicans couldn't care less about the lives of Cape Cod and Islanders, and this cut could do irreparable damage to our region. This move by the Trump administration threatens to close the Cape Bridges, and we are going to fight back to ensure Cape and Islanders have safe and reliable transportation access. Cape Cod Canal Region Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Marie Oliva concurred that the USACE has not been notified of any funding being revoked. However, Oliver also noted that federal funds for the project were approved by a bipartisan Congress, and Cape residents deserve infrastructure that is safe and reliable. Replacing the bridge is essential to the safety, mobility, and economic health of our region, she said. The Cape Cod Canal Region Chamber of Commerce will continue to advocate for smart infrastructure investments to support our residents, visitors, and local businesses. In other news, the Sagamore Cemetery, among Bourne's oldest and most vaunted burial grounds, was granted $25,000 of community preservation funds to remove 29 rotting and dead trees which threaten the antique headstones and inscriptions that dot the site. The motion was approved almost unanimously. "Why should we care?" said Elizabeth Ellis, the Cemetery Association director, "and want to preserve these gravestones that mark the burial sites of people, some of whom were gone through 1900 and many more who lived and died before Bourne even became chartered as a town in 1884? The answer," Ellis explained, "is in the historic and genealogical significance of the site and in its preservation of a beautiful green space in a neighborhood that otherwise does not have a public park. The epitaphs preserved in the cemetery's 100 of gravestones can summarize the zeitgeist of a bygone age, often in just a few words," Ellis said. They give succeeding generations a summary of the economic, religious, medical, political, and social climate of a lifetime, an era in Sagamore, and indeed of the centuries. These headstones, many of which are dated to the mid-19th century, have inscriptions stating "lost at sea" or mark the resting places of mothers who died in childbirth, relics that depict a time when Cape Codders took to the sea en masse for a living and before the dawn of modern medicine. Further, approximately 17 members of our town's founding namesake Bourne family rest in peace at this island of tranquility, Ellis continued, which is open to the public for research, strolling, and genealogical pursuits in a village that has no park. Now, with CPC funding, the Sagamore Cemetery will remain an undamaged resting place for hundreds of long-dead Bourne residents rather than a resting place for dead and toppled-over trees. Falmouth Academy invites families to attend its fall open house on Saturday, November 1st from 1 to 3 p.m. This event offers families a comprehensive intro to the school's academic program, community, and approach to education. Guests will have the opportunity to tour the campus with student ambassadors, attend mini-classes, hear directly from faculty about the school's curriculum, and gain insights from a student panel. To make the Academy experience more accessible, bus transportation is available for students traveling from Off-Cape, Mid-Cape, the South Coast, and Martha's Vineyards. For families seeking a weekday option, the school also offers a 5-day homestay program, allowing students to live with local host families Monday through Friday and return home on weekends. For more info, visit falmouthacademy.org/admission. The planned Pocasset Cell Tower, a 120-foot-tall spire of telecommunications to be erected off Barlow's Landing Road, passed its review by the Conservation Committee in its meeting on October 16th. Planned by telecom infrastructure company Vertex Towers, it is intended to remedy the intermittent and spotty cell service many currently experience in the neighborhood. No members of the public spoke at the Conservation Commission against the project. The plan was approved by Conservation Commission members, and the project is scheduled for review by the Zoning Board of Appeals on Wednesday, November 5th, as it requires approval on a requested height zone variance. And from the opinion page today, this editorial titled "Rail Service to Cape Cod is Worth Pursuing." This week we had planned to write about an interesting bit we found in the Enterprise archives circa 1980, when the Bourne and Sandwich selectmen were at odds with local business owners about bringing the commuter rail to the Cape. But then news broke this weekend of the federal funding pause, throwing the entire Cape Cod Bridges program into question. It would be too easy to gripe and moan about this administration's continuous failures to serve actual American citizens over its own agenda, leading to the longest full government shutdown in American history at 21 days and counting. A partial shutdown during Trump's first term lasted a whopping 35 days. White House Budget Director Russell Vought, when announcing the funding pause last week, said that lower priority projects were being halted and considered for cancellation. The Bourne and Sagamore bridges, which carry millions of travelers annually and are the region's only connections to the mainland, are a far cry from being low priority, and labeling them as such is an affront to the hardworking Americans of Barnstable County and the surrounding region. Instead, we found a bit of inspiration in this week's From the Enterprise Archives feature in the idea of trains as a mode of transportation. In the October 17, 1980 article, business owners in Buzzards Bay reported their businesses were suffering because of the construction going on at the Bourne Bridge at the time. The way they saw it, any rail service to Cape Cod means prosperity. We think they might be onto something. The consensus among business owners was clear. Any type of rail service would benefit the local economy. One business owner said they chose to move to Buzzards Bay because they saw it as a growth area. That was 45 years ago, and sentiments are still largely the same today. Both the want and need for rail service to the Cape region are still there, waiting to be served. Elected officials in Bourne and Sandwich in the 80s weren't keen on the idea, with environmental concerns being the driving force. The idea of Bourne becoming a bedroom community for people working in Boston didn't help. But 45 years later, that fear hasn't materialized. If anything, it's the opposite. Generally speaking, the working class on Cape Cod can't afford to live here, so they commute from elsewhere. But with the new town meeting approved MBTA zoning regulations, the housing market will ideally become a more level playing field for the missing middle. And since the town is zoned as an MBTA community served by public transit anyway, why shouldn't it benefit from actually having a public transit in the form of either a commuter or passenger train in the immediate vicinity? The addition of rail service to the area, which has existing infrastructure, has the potential to take cars off our roads and highways and to mitigate congestion and stress on the nearly 100-year-old bridges. Especially with funding for the bridge's replacement frozen and the future uncertain, we think rail service to the Cape is a track worth pursuing. And we've reached the halfway point of this broadcast. I'll now read today's obituaries. John Kevin Peyton of Bourne died on October 21st. He was 80. A celebration of life will be announced at a later date. Val Kenton von Heeder of Bourne died on October 19th. He was 79. No public services have been announced at this time. Stephen G. Morris of Buzzards Bay died on October 7th. He was 63. Born in New York, he graduated from Selden High School. He pursued further education to become a master plumber. Known for his commitment to help others, he also served as a volunteer fire chief and firefighter for many years in Ackworth, New Hampshire. Upon retiring, he moved to Buzzards Bay. He loved to quahog and harvest oysters and raise his Boston Terriers. He was also an avid chicken farmer, selling fresh eggs to the Buzzards Bay community. In addition to his mother, who lives on Long Island, New York, he leaves his partner, Jennifer Martin of Buzzards Bay, and brothers Richard Morris of New York and Robert Morris of Pennsylvania. He was predeceased by his father, Nicholas Morris. A celebration of life will be held on Saturday, October 25th, from noon to 3 p.m. at Aptuxet VFW Post in Bourne. James Sherman Deed of Bourne died on October 18th after a battle with mesothelioma cancer. He was 67. Born in Attleboro, he lived in Plainville for most of his childhood. After graduating from King Philip Regional High School in 1977, he moved to Buzzards Bay in the early 80s. He established two businesses in town, D&D Oil and DRT Heating and Air Conditioning, and was known as a mentor. A member of the American Legion No. 273 in the Wareham Elks, Post 73, he was also a longtime member of the Pocasset Golf Club. He leaves his wife, Jessie Deed, and his sons James, Zachary, Joshua, Tyler, and Ryan Deed. Visiting hours will be held on Tuesday, November 4th, from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Nickerson Bourne Funeral Home in Bourne. A funeral mass will be celebrated on Wednesday, November 5th at 11 a.m. at St. Margaret of Scotland Catholic Church, 141 Main Street in Buzzards Bay. Charles Payne Woodward, Jr. of Bourne, a U.S. Army veteran, died on October 15th at Bourne Manor Extended Care after a decline resulting from a fall and a recent stroke. He was 94. He attended Walpole High School before enlisting in the U.S. Army, where he served as a corporal in the Korean War. At 19, while serving in the 1st Cavalry Division during the Korean War, he was one of the first to cross the 38th parallel into North Korea in October 1950. Under enemy fire, his company of 150 men was nearly wiped out. Critically wounded by a gunshot to the abdomen, he held his position for hours until rescue arrived. For his service, he was awarded the Purple Heart, the Army of Occupation Medal Japan, the Korean Service Medal with 2 campaign stars, the National Defense Medal, the Good Conduct Medal, and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. Following his military service, he continued to serve, pursuing a career in law enforcement. He held different civil service occupations throughout the years: Walpole State Prison Corrections Officer, Mass State Police Academy, first graduating class in 1956, Wrentham Police Officer Patrolman, Wrentham Police Underwater Rescue and Recovery Unit, Plainville Chief of Police, Wrentham Police Sergeant, and Blue Knights member. On October 14th, he was honored in a pinning ceremony for his courage on the battlefield, leadership in law enforcement, and lifetime of service. An avid sportsman, he enjoyed hunting, archery, fishing, underwater diving, and riding his Harley-Davidson in the countryside. He leaves his children, Shelley Maddox, Karen Dolan, Lawrence J. Woodward, Charles P. Woodward III, James Woodward Sr., and Kimberly Woodward, 13 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren, a sister, Christine Davis, and many nieces, nephews, and cousins. He was predeceased by his wife, Bernadette Woodward, and his brother, James Woodward. Services were held in October in Bourne. And the following residents, former residents, or family of residents of Falmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich recently died. Visit capenews.net to read the complete obituary news stories. Elizabeth B. Brackett, 77, of Dorchester, died on October 15th. Joanne B. Coleman, 91, of East Falmouth, died on September 28th. Raymond Daigle, 61, of Mashpee, October 16th. Richard Gagner, 71, of Spring Hill, Florida, and Bourne, October 4th. David Maciel, 60, of Buffalo, Texas, died on September 8th. Hossein Madani, 80, of Mashpee, October 15th. Robert Marshall, 85, of Falmouth, October 2nd. Catherine Norton, 77, of Mashpee, October 2nd. Jeanette Roderick, 98, of Sandwich, died on September 28th. Maya G. Schaubert, 21, of Sandwich, died on October 14th. Nancy Schiltz, 91, of Scituate, October 15th. Bradley Smith, 66, of Falmouth, October 14th. And Francis Young, 77, of Falmouth, died on October 13th. Back to the news, and the following are excerpts from the Bourne Police Logs dated Wednesday, October 15th through Wednesday, October 22nd. On Wednesday, October 15th, police responded at 9:05 p.m. to a 3-vehicle crash at Gallo Ice Arena on Sandwich Road. Police said the driver of a black Jeep Grand Cherokee attempted to turn left into the parking lot and cut off a blue 2021 Infiniti. The driver of a white Jeep Cherokee attempted to swerve around the collision but hit the back end of the Grand Cherokee. 2 people involved in the crash were taken to area hospitals, and both the Cherokee and Infiniti had to be towed from the scene. The driver of the Grand Cherokee, identified as James Mullen, 58, of Yarmouthport, was cited for failure to yield to oncoming traffic. On Friday, October 17th at 4:28 a.m., police made an arrest on Taylor Road in Buzzards Bay. Police said that a homeowner called to report that someone had driven a white Toyota Camry onto their lawn. Officers arrived and found the vehicle running with the driver, Crystal Lawson, 40, of Marston's Mills, slumped over the steering wheel. Roadside assessments were conducted, and the officers determined that Lawson was under the influence of prescription drugs. She was arrested, booked, and charged with operating a motor vehicle under the influence of drugs. Second offense. She was held without bail and transported to the Barnstable County Correctional Facility. An arrest was made at 1:38 p.m. on Main Street in Buzzards Bay. Police said that an officer on patrol recognized Paul Hamilton, 71, of Buzzards Bay. Hamilton had an active warrant out of Wareham District Court charging him with breaking and entering a vehicle boat for a felony. He was arrested and booked on the warrant charge and later released on personal recognizance. On Saturday, October 18th, police made an arrest at 7:46 p.m. on Scenic Highway. Police said an officer on patrol saw a black Chevy Equinox traveling east toward Sagamore Beach, speeding and swerving in and out of lanes. The car was clocked going 60 in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. The car was stopped and the driver was identified as Brian Masterson, 60, of Plymouth. Masterson was put through field sobriety tests, which he failed. He was arrested and charged with operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, speeding, and marked lanes violation. He was later released on personal recognizance and to the care of a sober party. On Sunday, October 19th, a motor vehicle stop on Sandwich Road near the Bourne Bridge at 4:31 p.m. led to several citations issued. Police said the driver of a black 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee was issued citations for uninsured motor vehicle, uninspected motor vehicle, and operating a motor vehicle with a suspended registration. The vehicle was towed from the scene due to the suspended registration. Police did not release the driver's name pending arraignment. At 5:32 p.m., police made an arrest at the Trading Post Lounge on Trowbridge Road. Police said officers were called to the establishment on reports of a disturbance caused by an intoxicated customer who was told to leave but kept coming back inside. Police said they arrested Isaiah J. Stover, 49, of Sandwich. Stover was charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct. He was later released on personal recognizance. On Wednesday, October 22nd, an arrest was made inside the Bourne police station on Armory Road in Buzzards Bay. At 7:09 a.m., police said a man identified as Elliot Jackson, 55, of Bourne, went to the station and asked to speak with an officer. A check of Jackson's identity revealed that he had several warrants out of Lynn District Court. All 3 warrants charged him with shoplifting by concealing merchandise, police said. No bail was issued, and following booking, he was taken to Falmouth District Court for arraignment. In some other news, a head-on crash on Sandwich Road near the South Rotary by the Bourne Bridge resulted in a traffic nightmare for drivers on Thursday. 1 person was transported to an area hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, and Sandwich Road had to be closed in both directions. Bourne Police and Mass State Police responded to the scene at 6:58 a.m. Bourne Police reported the crash occurred near the Dunkin' Donuts restaurant. The crash forced both sides of the road to be closed to traffic, and Bourne Police advised travelers to expect significant delays throughout the area. Police report that Sandwich Road was fully reopened an hour later, around 8 a.m., but drivers were expecting residual traffic delays throughout the morning. And a dangerous dog hearing was held on October 9th concerning Wyatt, the 4-year-old dog involved in an altercation that resulted in the death of another dog at the Cape Cod Dog Center in Mashpee back in August. While the incident happened in Mashpee, Wyatt and his family live in Osterville, so Wyatt's fate rests with Barnstable Town Manager Mark Els. Barnstable Senior Natural Resources Officer Amy Croteau ran the hearing, which was held at Barnstable Town Hall. Mashpee Animal Control Officer Donald Chicoine started the hearing with his report. He was one of the officers who responded to the altercation. Chicoine said he received a call from Cape Cod Dog Center owner Kaylee Cullen about a dog bite incident at the facility the evening of August 27th. Chicoine spoke with 2 employees who witnessed the altercation. The female employee said she was putting Wyatt, a 4-year-old blackmouth cur mix, into a kennel. When she opened the kennel door, Buddy, the brown and white Boston Terrier that sustained fatal injuries, was inside the kennel and walked out into the hallway facility. The female employee said she tried to grab Wyatt, but he ran around to her and went after Buddy. Wyatt was biting Buddy, and she was unable to separate the 2 dogs. The female employee sustained hand injuries while trying to separate the dogs. She then retrieved a male employee for assistance. The female employee said Wyatt eventually let go of Buddy and was moved into his kennel. Buddy was motionless on the hallway floor. The female employee then called Cullen to report the altercation, who called Chicoine to the scene. Chicoine said Buddy had a 1.5-inch hole in his left rib area and blood on his neck, left rib, and torso area. He said Wyatt was growling inside his kennel and slowly moving toward the door with his ears tucked and teeth showing. James Mills, Buddy's owner, was on vacation with no cell service when the altercation occurred. Mills was advised of the altercation a few days later and said he did not want Wyatt euthanized, as he did not want another family to go through losing their pet. Mills said he would let the police conduct an investigation and deem an appropriate outcome for Wyatt. Wyatt's owner, Jeffrey Horblett, disagreed with the described altercation and said Chicoine's report clearly omits facts and intended to portray Wyatt as a dangerous dog without the facts or circumstances that demonstrate otherwise. Horblett said he reviewed video footage of the altercation in preparing his testimony. Horblett said the altercation involved 4 dogs, not just Wyatt and Buddy. He also said the female employee initiated and supervised the introduction of 2 dogs, including Buddy, in a shared space with Wyatt and another dog. Horblett said the female employee inexplicably and unexplainably opened a kennel door to let Buddy and another dog join Wyatt and another dog. Horblett said Buddy and another dog were mixing it up a little bit and posturing before Buddy approached Wyatt. Horblett said Buddy bit Wyatt's face and Wyatt pulled away. Horblett acknowledged the tragedy of Wyatt killing Buddy, but said it was unfair and unreasonable to conclude that Wyatt initiated the aggressive physical contact, as Wyatt had adequate justification in his response to defend himself. Horblett also said the Cape Cod Dog Center staff were unprepared and ill-equipped to manage the dogs as the altercation unfolded and escalated in their presence. He said this was not an instance of a bad situation, not bad dogs. Horblett said Wyatt's adoption letter described him as a happy social guy that loves to give and receive love from people and other pups. Horblett said he and his wife Laura have 2 other dogs at home and have never experienced or observed aggressive behavior in Wyatt. Chicoine said Mashpee Animal Control received a report that Wyatt had gotten out of a fenced-in area back in June and attacked a cat named Reba. The attack resulted in Reba receiving 2 surgeries. Cullen said she was not aware of the June incident and Wyatt would have been removed from the facility if she were aware. After the August altercation, Chicoine said Barnstable Animal Control issued a quarantine for Wyatt. Horblett said he sent Wyatt to a trainer for 3 days after the quarantine to have him observed and evaluated. He said the trainer deemed Wyatt was neither unsafe nor dangerous, and he stayed at the trainer's facility for 5 days without incident. Chicoine said Cape Cod Dog Center complied with kennel regulations the evening of the altercation. Regulations require a ratio of 1 employee to 15 dogs, and the facility had 2 employees to 13 dogs. Chicoine recommended numerous actions for the facility, including placing dog brake sticks in the main hallway to help separate dogs involved in altercations, hanging signs on the kennels when they are in use, and providing ongoing training for employees to separate dogs during altercation. Cape Cod Dog Center will be implementing stricter protocols as a response to the altercation. Horblett asked that the complaint against Wyatt be dismissed without further action. His wife asked for a section of the female employee's interview to be stricken and redacted from the public record because it is so misleading and inaccurate. She referred to the section where the female employee said Wyatt was in a kennel, she opened its door, and Wyatt went after Buddy. Chicoine said he cannot redact a section of the interview because it is part of the investigation, but Croteau said she can check with the legal department about blacking out inconsistencies in the report and video footage. Croteau said she will review the footage with the timelines testified by Chicoine and Horblett and will forward her recommendation to Els for review. Croteau said Chicoine and Horblett should receive a response from Els within 10 business days. No decision has yet been issued, according to an employee at Barnstable Town Manager's office. And here is this week's weekly Nature Watch column, written by Mary Richmond, titled, What Appears to Be Spent Might Not Be. On a recent visit to one of my favorite beaches, it was quickly evident that all the blooms and fruits of summer were now gone. Simply spent, it seemed. The seaside goldenrods were now loaded with puffs of seeds. The rose hips were shriveled and losing color, and the beach grasses were waving in the wind as they let go of the last of their seeds. Autumn is a season for leaving here in New England. Birds migrate south, reptiles and amphibians quietly find safe places to spend their dormant months, and flowering plants give way to skeletal remains. Summer, it seems, has spent all her riches, and fall must now pick up what is left of the pieces and make them safe for winter. One bee flew across my path. Nights had been very cool, and there wasn't much left for this lone bee to feed on. I silently wished it well and hoped it at least found a warm place to rest and perhaps fade from this lifetime in peace. A small flock of tree swallows rose from the dunes, twittering in swallow language as they flew about before settling in again. Many swallows have already migrated, and these would no doubt follow soon. The sand was littered with feathers molted by gulls and a few ducks. The molted shells of horseshoe crabs were also strewn about on the beach, many broken and sad-looking as they rested among piles of seaweed and old battered seashells. As I stood watching the feisty waves raise a spray here and there as they rushed the shore, I found myself contemplating the word spent. Everywhere I looked, things seemed done, over, spent. The definition of the word spent is to be used up, exhausted, or consumed. It appears to be final, though in nature's case, spent often is a phase in a circular cycle, not an end. The milk pods stood on brittle, dead stalks bereft of leaves and blooms. All that remained were tufts of seeds, waiting to be dispersed with the wind, which was obliging, even as I watched. Those specific milkweed plants were indeed spent. They will not regrow. Having spread their seeds, their work was done. They will live on through generations of progeny, however, and this is true of many plants as well as animals. Many invertebrates die off each fall, leaving behind eggs or larvae to survive the winter. Those that don't get eaten, frozen, starved, or displaced will grow a new generation until they too are done, gone, and spent. It's a cycle as old as time. As I get older, I find myself noticing a lot of endings. The reassuring part of this is realizing that not all endings are what they seem. Many endings are simply making way for new beginnings. Each generation makes way for the next, and so it has been forever. As humans, we are mammals, and this is as true for us as it is for our pets, the rabbits on our lawns, and the deer nibbling on our tree branches. On a recent afternoon, I happened to look out my back door to get a better look at the bird action taking place in my garden. The sunflowers that had reached 8 feet in their full bloom days were now spent, broken in some cases, their seedy faces looking at the ground rather than the sun. The goldfinches had been joined by chickadees in recent days, and on this day there were several titmice and a downy woodpecker, each with their own dried-up seed head to feed upon. The sun was low in the sky and caught them all in golden light. As I watched, I realized a rabbit was sitting beneath the nearby lilac bushes, and a squirrel was digging around, apparently bearing an acorn it had found. The grasses I let go to seed were full of song sparrows, and a pair of cardinals were busy in the now-spent vegetable garden, picking up the seeds the other birds were dropping as they worked the sunflowers in that garden. For someone who grew up in a time when Disney movies were full of magic and animals that fed from people's hands, this was a lovely moment for me. I just watched and smiled and realized that even though these plants, this garden, appeared spent to others, it was still full of life. As the fall progresses into winter and the news grows drearier each day, let us look for the signs of life, of goodness, and of hope. The old plants may be spent, but their seeds live on, waiting to be planted. They will bloom for us when spring comes around again. And that was written by Mary Richmond, who's an artist, writer, naturalist, and educator who grew up on the Cape and lives in Hyannis. Briefly, in some sports news, playing in their penultimate game of the 2025 season, the Bourne Mashpee Wareham field hockey team came up short against a strong Fairhaven squad on Tuesday afternoon. The Blue Devils held off a solid effort by BMW to win by a 2-0 score. The Bourne High School boys soccer team entered its match on Monday afternoon against neighboring Upper Cape Tech, knowing it was not playing for a spot in the state playoffs, but rather for nothing more than pride against a UCT team that was near the top of the Division 5 ranks and already had its spot in the state tournament wrapped up. The Canalmen came through with one of their best efforts of 2025 and posted their first victory of the year. Bourne scored itself a 1-0 upset victory, ending a 12-game losing streak in the process. On Wednesday, with their sights set squarely on making a run in that Division 5 state tournament, the Upper Cape boys soccer team stayed hot by earning a 1-0 victory against Old Colony. The Bourne High School cross-country teams hosted Fairhaven on Tuesday and ran to a split against the Blue Devils. The boys won a 24-31 meet and the girls lost 20-35. The Upper Cape Tech ladies scored a 2-0 victory against Old Colony on Wednesday. That was the Upper Cape Tech girls soccer team. Upper Cape Tech came up short in its bid for the boys' championship in Mayflower League as they dropped a tight meet against South Shore Vocational on Tuesday, 24-32. In volleyball, the team earned a big win on Tuesday, downing Sturgis West by a 3-1 score. Upper Cape Tech came out flat in the first set, but then they rebounded and played very well going forward, sweeping the next 3 games. New Yorker comics, television series, movies, cartoons, and most recently a popular Netflix series have kept the Addams family in the cultural zeitgeist for more than 50 years, with multiple generations becoming fans of Morticia and Gomez, their children Wednesday and Pugsley, Butler Lurch, and extended relatives Uncle Fester, Grandma, and Cousin It. Falmouth Theatre Guild patrons get their chance to meet the family when the Guild presents The Addams Family, a new musical comedy, opening appropriately on Halloween, Friday, October 31st, and running for 3 weekends through Sunday, November 16th. Joan Mackenzie Baird, the director of this Falmouth Theatre Guild premiere, said she was a fan of the original Addams Family TV show, which aired in black and white from 1964 to 1966. I thought it'd be fun to bring the musical to the FTG stage. Mackenzie Baird is excited to present some new faces to Falmouth Guild audiences. It's always exciting to have new cast members, she said. This is a smaller cast than I've had in past shows at the Falmouth Theatre Guild. It's amazing to watch a group of people bond so quickly. In addition to the 21-member cast, an orchestra of 11 musicians will perform under the direction of Pam Wani, who also provided vocal direction for the performers. Set design is by Brett Baird. The show starts in a spooky graveyard and moves into an equally spooky mansion. With the show Wednesday currently streaming on Netflix, and the Addams Family having never really gone out of popular culture, the show should appeal to audiences of all ages. It's definitely a family show. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your continued support of the Audible Local Ledger.